Hi, my name is Matt Hollowell. I'm the founder and executive director of the Construction Safety Research Alliance at the University of Colorado, and I'm the CEO of Safety Function. In this session, we're going to bring you the highlights of the last 20 years of our research, and we're going to focus on the concept of preventing serious injuries and fatalities. The principles that you'll hear about in this session are backed by years of research, not just my ideas of how to keep people safe. And we're going to focus on how to deploy those and the safety activities that you already perform to ensure that everybody goes home at the end of the day. The session has two major objectives. We're going to talk about why SIF prevention, serious injury and fatality prevention, should be our top priority and integrated across everything we do in the name of safety. And we'll talk about how to do that by applying specific energy-based safety principles that really bring SIF prevention into focus within the activities that you perform on a day-to-day basis. Now, if there is one trend that I wish everybody knew and understood in the industry, it is the one that you see on the graph beside me. You see two lines on this graph. The top bold line, that's our recordable injury rate. This generally represents less severe injuries. The trend that you see on the bottom, in the dashed line, that's our fatality rate. Unfortunately, what the trend shows is that although we have cut our recordable injuries in half, we have the same fatality rate that we have had for the last 17 years. That means that our minor injuries we're doing well with our minor injuries, but our serious injuries, fatalities, our SIFs have not budged. So if we want to look at this from a different perspective, why should we care so much about the dashed line? I oftentimes will ask a somewhat provocative question. How many recordable injuries would we trade for one life? And if we think about that question deeply, how many of the small injuries would we trade for one really serious injury? That becomes a really difficult and uncomfortable conversation. Generally, I think the answer is we would trade all of them, all of those low severity injuries for that one life. And if that is indeed true, what that means is that almost all of our attention should be placed on the hazards and conditions that cause those serious injuries. What we'll cover in this session is exactly how to do that based on the research. Now, one thing that has driven safety for many, many years is what's known as the safety pyramid. It is true, as you can see here on the graphic, that there are fewer high severity injuries than there are low severity injuries. But what somebody made up many years ago was that addressing the bottom of this pyramid would help us with the top. And that's simply not true. If you want the most intense evidence of that possible, look at the graph that's still on the screen. Those lines would have to trend together if that were true. And they simply don't. And they crossed in the last couple of years. Another way to think about this is if we figured out how to fix every single cut to the finger, that would not necessarily prevent every trench collapse or electrical contact. So what we need is something different. We need a new way of looking at safety and prioritizing the hazards that cause serious injuries and fatalities. Now, one of the highlights of our research is that the things that hurt people are not the same as the things that kill people. The things that cause an ankle sprain or a cut to the finger are not the same types of hazards that cause our trench collapses and our electrical contacts. And what we found is if we really want to focus on eliminating serious injuries and fatalities, we need to have an intense focus on the conditions that cause them. Energy-based safety helps us do just that. Now, energy-based safety, I'm going to boil down into 4 simple principles, and there's a lot behind each one of these. The first is that energy is what causes harm. Whether it's a serious injury and fatality or a minor injury, it's all caused by energy contacting the human body. Now, in our research, we found that we're pretty good at recognizing hazards. We can identify about half, 45% to be exact, of the hazards that we face in a typical workday without any tools or specialty training. But that means that we miss about half. And the energy wheel that you see on the screen beside me, this is a simple tool that helps us look for more hazards more broadly, and maybe helps us find some hazards that we would otherwise overlook. And so the first principle is that energy causes harm. The second is that more energy causes more harm. Our bodies can sustain a certain amount of energy, but when it exceeds a certain threshold, 1500 joules to be exact, our bodies simply cannot handle that much energy at a given time, and a serious injury or fatality is the outcome. So, we've boiled this down into some simple field tools that can be deployed. One being the high energy icons that you see. These are the most common energy sources in our environment that cause our serious injuries and fatalities. And a shorthand that folks oftentimes use is sticky to represent those. That's the stuff that kills you. And so the second principle is that more energy causes more harm. And that's a pivotal concept in SIF prevention because it brings into focus the specific hazards that we need to attend to in our safety planning and our execution of work. Now, the third principle is that it's the control of that energy that saves people's lives. It's not necessarily the values that we bring to the table or our culture or the trust we build in the organization, but the laser focus needs to be on the controls that save people's lives. And we've introduced this concept of direct controls, which defines when a control is enough protection against one of those life-threatening hazards, the high energy hazards, if you will. And the attributes of those is that the control must be targeted, strong, and forgiving. Targeted means it's there specifically for that high energy hazard. Strong means that it mitigates the energy when it's installed, verified, and used properly. And forgiving means that it works even if somebody makes a mistake during work. So the control itself is not forgiving, but it's forgiving against our potential errors. And we're all human. We make errors constantly. Now, the fourth principle is that it's people that ultimately drive performance. And although it would be nice to say, let's just put all the controls into place, we need to remember that our controls are installed, verified, and used by people. So we need to ensure that people are in an environment where they can thrive. We all, like I said, we all make mistakes, but the situations that we're in really define whether we have a high probability of making a mistake or an error, or a low probability. That could be things like, are we fatigued? Are we rushed to do our work? Does everybody know the safe work procedure, etc.? So the last of the four principles is that we really need to focus on people and increasing our reliability in the installation and verification of our controls. So putting these into one kind of concept, you could think about how this all fits into the safety program. We do a lot of things as organizations. I mentioned culture and trust and values. Those things are incredibly important. But our ultimate goal must always be to control our high energy hazards, the ones that cause our serious injuries and fatalities. Now, if we can do that, then that is our pathway towards SIF elimination. To achieve the control of high energy in the field, we do need these outer layers of the onion. They're very important. We need work planning. We need management systems. We need aligned goals and objectives. And we have to make sure that we have a strong culture and values in our organization. But ultimately, all of those things must align towards one primary objective, and that is controlling the high energy in our work. The reality is we need high energy to move things, cut things, lift things. And safety really becomes the extent to which we can control that high energy so that we can get our work done without that energy coming in contact with the human body. Now, energy-based safety and SIF prevention really isn't another thing to do in safety. We're already doing a lot of really good things. We have robust safety systems that have design and planning. We have pre-job briefs. We have our ways of addressing change through stop work authority. We have safety walks that are done by our peers or our leaders, and we measure and learn as organizations. Energy-based safety and SIF prevention is all about inserting these concepts in those activities that we already perform to bring a more intense focus on serious injuries and fatalities within those activities. So this shouldn't be another form, it shouldn't be just another procedure, but a way to do everything we do in safety with a focus on serious injuries and fatalities and using methods that are backed by research. Now, let's take a moment and bring this all together. What we've learned in this session is that our serious injury and fatality rates are flat. We have not made progress in reducing our SIFs for almost 17 years. What we've learned in the research is that these particular events are caused by uncontrolled high energy hazards. That has unlocked a serious injury fatality or SIF prevention strategy that is based in research. The second thing that we've learned is that we really do need high energy to get our work done. And safety becomes our ability to control that high energy to get our work done without that energy contacting the human body. And what helps us to do that? Direct controls. So for every high energy hazard, our aspiration should be to have controls that are targeted, strong, and forgiving, meaning they're there for our high energy hazards, they mitigate the energy when they're installed, verified, and used properly, and they work even when somebody makes a mistake. So if you're watching this, whether you're a CEO of a company or you're the first day on your tools like I mentioned, everybody has a role in serious injury and fatality prevention. If we can put our energy-based safety principles to practice through the way that we organize our work, the mission and values that we have as an organization, and how we install specific controls on our day-to-day basis, we all have a role to play. And I hope that you will use these materials to have better, more specific conversations about how to control serious injuries and fatalities, because the only way that we're going to make progress towards SIF elimination is if we work together. Thank you.